Right.
That's the way I also understood the request, but thank you, Greg, for confirming it.
Thanks.
Are we sure that this laptop and printer couldn't be used as in shared services with OPT?
I'm thinking probably not, but it doesn't mean that we can't explore that idea.
I would appreciate if we could explore the idea that maybe this is a infrastructure or improvements that we could utilize within another department.
Okay, we just have to, yes, I can explore the idea and see if the option is there.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess I got a technical question here, Len, because I don't understand a lot of high-tech stuff, but if we have all these printers throughout the city in different areas, isn't there a way that we could tie into them instead of having to keep going out and getting a printer to be a standalone, or, that we could just, like if we had like a multi-use printer that was down in TPW, that down at that garage, that when they could tap into it with the laptop, and or if there's one up the water plant, if they're at that area of the city, or if they're in the main part of the city. Trying to think penny wise here, just, every dollar counts. I don't think, if they're going to be printing from the field and going to a printer, they could print to one that's nearby them, pick it up as they're going through, or it's just a thought. I don't know if that's even a possibility. I'm not big into that. So
I think that's what Mark was getting at, right? Mark. Okay. So Jenny, if in your homework you find out that maybe these two items could be a shared service under OPT, that might work.
I will update you as I get the information.
Okay, thank you. So why don't we just we'll hold that item for right now until you get back with the committee. Is there anybody else that wants to move it up to council?
I would appreciate you moving it to council. That way we can move forward, because the orders take a long time now because hardware is hard to come by. So we may not get this for a while.
Well, I mean, I respect that, but I think until we get our answers and trying to make sure where we're at, I would feel more comfortable holding back until we get our answers.
Could I just jump in real quick again? I think the laptop we should go forward with now, because I don't think we'll come to another conclusion there. There physically isn't another computer that this supervisor could use. The printer, we can check in more detail on that with Pyramid and just make sure that this couldn't be networked such that he could print with a different printer. We can look into that. Maybe that could be a savings, but I don't see us coming to the conclusion that he doesn't need the laptop. I think it's just something we really need. But I think we can definitely check on the printer. Maybe there's something we missed there.
John, do you have any other questions?
No.
So Jenny, when you're doing your homework and you find out that we could share the services with OPT, are we going to be able to backtrack this?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Do the other committee members understand what I'm asking? Okay. Do you want to hold this, table it, or do you want to move it up to full council?
I like Greg's idea. I'd be all right moving the laptop part. I think, that's obviously, I think he's going to need it by the sounds, but the printer part I would like to hold on to, because maybe that'd be a bigger discussion within the finance committee or even other committees, is if we could find a way to do this where there's, 3 different stages throughout the city, and our guys can get to them and stuff and still be operating at a highest efficiency, versus trying to get all of this and then trying to maintain it all. And then you're having to go get ink from all these, different style inks and stuff like that, that if we could get it to be almost like a standardized through, and I think that might, be helpful, and could be a potential savings there. And just my 2 thoughts on that.
Mark, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I guess my thinking is that moving them both to council, and then Jenny being able to get a word back from Jenny, but then I don't know how that would work. So maybe it's better off. I certainly agree we need to move the laptop, but maybe we would need to wait on the printer. I'm still undecided about what the best course of action with that is, but I agree, trying to look into ways that we might be able to cut some savings, even if it's, whatever, $700 odd dollars. I think we need to think about every little place we can.
Okay, I'll modify the request to do just the laptop, and I'll hold the order on the printer until I get back to you with more information.
John, you're good with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Jenny, you want to talk about the refinancing?
Well, I have one more budget transfer. Can we finish that one? It's on the Pine Street Capital Project.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. Oh, for $3,357 because we might have a lead pipe. So
Yes. In the Pine Street, and Greg can talk about more of this in detail, but the Pine Street Capital Project, in digging up the different sewer lines there, they found 2 lead services that need to get replaced. This was not estimated in the capital project. And right now they have found 2 of them that need to be replaced, and they're thinking they may find one more by the time they complete the project. So I'm asking for $10,000 to be added to the capital project budget. We don't need to modify the water budget because we've already adopted in the 2020 budget a contribution from the water fund to the capital project fund. So the water fund is set. What I need to do is modify the capital project budget to increase it by the 10,000 for the replacing the lead pipes.
Greg, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. This project was intended to replace the sewer lines on Pine Street and also do some general fund work, which would be repaving and replacing some curbs and sidewalks. Our records indicated that all the services were in of copper. That's not something we typically replace unless we're replacing the water main or there's some other issue like a leak with the service. In this case, we just discovered that our records were incomplete or incorrect and found a couple of lead services. So our policy, anytime we want to repave a street, we try to replace the lead services that we know about on that street. So we've got the street all torn up. We discovered that these are 2 lead ones, so it just makes sense to do it now rather than wait and have it potentially leak or be an issue later.
Correct. And so potentially we only have 1 more to go. They've identified 2 and we only have 1 more.
That could be, yeah, there could be 2 more. I don't think it's likely that there's going to be more than maybe another 1, maybe 2, but at this point, our records all indicate copper, the rest of them. So that's part of the fun of construction is there are surprises that you don't expect. And I'm not going to,
right.
There won't be 2 more instead of 1, but our best estimate.
And to that point, how are we doing with the contingencies? I mean, meaning you bid or you plan to do what, 10% or 20% above in construction costs, correct?
Depends on the level of estimating. So for our budget for the construction, we have a 5% roughly contingency.
Okay.
Correct, Jenny, in this case, that's typically what we use, I believe.
Correct.
In this case as well, yeah. So if you estimate preliminary project costs, you're going to use a higher 10 or 15%. Once you get down to you have the actual pricing for the project, you're going to construction. We like to cut that down to 5%. Obviously, there's sometimes like this instance, there are things that come up you didn't anticipate at all, like spending any money on water.
Right. Has there been any other unforeseens that have popped up?
Yeah, some little things with location of existing utilities. We found an old gas main that's been abandoned that's directly in the trench where we're installing the new sewer main. That added a little bit of cost. We've made some changes in the quantity of curb and increased the quantity of curb replacing and reduced the quantity of sidewalk based on existing conditions. Various other miscellaneous things in the Wilbur Park part of it, but overall, I think we're still within our budget.
So we really haven't tapped the 5%.
I don't believe we're there yet. We've cut into it a bit, but we'll see after this next. we're working with the contractor to finalize the change order amounts right now for some of the changes. We've issued change directives based on the things we found in the field. The final numbers are based on their actual costs. So that I can't tell you for certain right now.
Okay. Any committee member have a question? Go ahead, Mark.
So Greg, just to clarify, this is from the main to the meter. Is that what we're addressing?
From the main to the curb stop.
Okay, and is the property owner responsible from that then through?
That's correct.
Okay.
Not certain whether that side of the service is lead. I don't know that we know that at this point. If we find that there's a lead service on the customer owned side, we'll alert them and encourage them to replace it, but we can't require them to.
Well, it's unfortunate, but I think it needs to be done, and this is the time to do it. So I'm certainly in support of this.
John or Scott, any questions?
No questions. It seems perfectly clear strategically that we would not want to have lead being our main conduit to get water through. So just to make that connection.
I will, I think now's the time to do it. I agree with Mark, and it's unfortunate, with everything going on, but safety to our residents is number one. And I think this is something to go ahead and go through, and then hopefully nobody will have to dig Pine Street up. Is that the goal, Greg? The goal on all this?
You better knock on wood, Scott, but yeah, we hope to not have to dig it up again for a while.
Okay.
Why did we dig it up in the first place?
Okay, so Ginny, we'll move that on up to full council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're up to refinancing.
Okay, the city's got the opportunity to refinance our 2013 bond issue. And our bond counsel and our fiscal advisors are working on the paperwork right now. And I'm hoping to have the paperwork for the June 2nd council meeting. It will require a motion for the refinancing. And we're hoping right now the projection from 2021 to 2032, the savings will be $142,000. For 2021, that estimate is a little over $16,000 that will be shared through the general water and sewer funds for the debt payments there. And we never know, the numbers may change. They may get better by the time the refinancing is done. But I'm looking for wherever we can save money. And the bond counsel and I talked back in March, and they called me as soon as they got a good opportunity and said, now's the time to do it. And along with that, in 2013, we had an installment purchase with Johnson Controls when we did our water meters and things like that. That is also going to be refinanced. We have to do it before our July payment. Unfortunately, she's not able to provide any estimates for me right now because the banks are overwhelmed with the small business loans. But she has promised me that she will get it done before our July payment is due. So when I get more information on that, I'll be bringing it to the committee, and we'll also be doing another motion for that refinance. And that is really going to help the water fund, because the water fund right now is holding about 33% or about 59-60% of that debt. So that'll really help the water fund's interest payments.
Well, Jenny, thank you very much for getting out there and looking for these opportunities for us to capitalize on. I appreciate that. $142,000 over that many years is substantial. Truly appreciate you doing this.
You're welcome. But that's also
I sincerely,
that's what they do.
Right. And I sincerely doubt that I have to ask the question that anybody on the committee wants to save money. So we'll move that on up to full council.
Although I'll second your thanks to Jenny. So this is great. Thank you.
I'll be the third to thank you on that one.
Really, I appreciate your thank yous, but trust me, it's the bond counsel's job to do this for all their clients.
All right, so Ginny, let's switch over to the agenda. I guess we've got on E, Katie, you're up for refinance. No, I'm sorry, the PTO consideration.
Sure. So during the COVID emergency, we had a few employees who opted to stay and work rather than take vacation time. And because they're at their maximum accrual, they ended up losing time. And I would just like to see a temporary increase in the rollover cap so that people just basically don't lose vacation time that they're otherwise entitled to. So like, for instance, you know, we had an employee whose anniversary date I think was in February. No, I'm sorry. It was in April. And he decided to keep working because he thought it was the right thing to do. And he lost 17 days of vacation time because he decided to continue working because he thought it was the right thing to do. And in limited cases, I just think that that's the right thing to do. So to maybe retroactively look on a case-by-case basis to see if anyone lost out on vacation time, you know, just to extend, you know, even if we give them through the end of the year to use it or something like that, not an indefinite grant, but just an extension. I'd hate to see employees who stayed and worked hard be rewarded by losing out on vacation time, if that makes any sense.
Perfect.
Okay.
Is there any questions from the committee?
No, I think that makes a great deal of sense. It's not as if yeah, there's a reason to put a limit on accrued vacation, just not allow someone to get a year ahead of us. But in a situation like this, over that time frame, it makes perfect sense to say we got our 17 days of work and let's carry over this vacation in a reasonable amount of time.
That will be very meaningful to the employees. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I would just ask that, Katie, can you just advise us, say, October, November, somewhere's in there, on these individual cases that you're going to track where we're at? So we, to John's point, that we're not behind. That's all. We definitely want the employees to be able to take their personal time off.
Understood.
Jenny, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're down to Judy, correct? Did you have anything else? You're muted.
Sorry. We've got the COVID-19 financial update, but we can leave that till last if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't we leave that to last? Let Judy go ahead and take the floor for a minute. Go ahead, Judy.
Okay. So the Survive Then Thrive Task Force and the various committees have been meeting, and we put together a couple of funding proposals, basically, that we want to talk about for your consideration and consideration of taking it onto council. So we included in the agenda packet, we had a couple of handouts. So the first one I wanted to talk about is the arts and online sales promotion that Mark Drenick and Katrina have been working on through the promotions committee, which is the Survive part of our efforts. What they're looking to do is a 5-week promotional event that's online. They would be purchasing art from that Kano puts us in touch with, or they're contacting the artists, and they're going to be making recommendations for those purchases. And the idea behind it, I had included I don't know what that noise is, sorry. I included in here the overview of it, but also included is basically a picture of what the online promotion will look like. So people can basically, within that 5-week period, purchase from downtown and City of Oneonta retail and restaurants and various businesses. And then they'll have a mechanism to be able to report their receipts digitally and get $10 will get them $10 worth of money that they've spent on stuff locally will get them one ticket, and then they can take their tickets and drop them into the buckets basically for whatever artwork that they want to try to win. And at the end of the 10 or 5 weeks, there would be a drawing online, and that would be the end of the promotion. So we're looking for $3,000 from city funds to fund the program. Mark, do you want to add anything more before I talk about where that funding could come from?
Actually, Judy, you did a very thorough job with that. I think you hit all the points.
Okay. So the committee, the finance committee, through the Survive and Thrive Task Force, has been working on identifying various funding sources. So there's a few funds that the city has that we've taken a look at. We've run them past Ginny to make sure that she was on board that these funds could possibly be available for repurposing. So we have a number of funds that they're either old funding that we've had from prior like housing projects or prior program income that we don't have to turn back to the state. We can use it for economic development or housing projects. Old UDAG money, which is an old urban development grant fund. So the combination of those, there's 2, 3, 4 different programs that total up $141,000 roughly. In addition to that, there's a couple of other funds that it's possible we could draw from for the Survive Then Thrive efforts. We have some administrative money that has come into the city for some of our recent grants that have paid for our costs to administer the programs, but it's possible they could be repurposed. And then there's some ongoing projects that, like the DRI admin funds, that it's possible we might be able to use those, but we would have to get approval from the state funding agency if we decide to go that route. So basically the $3,000, I'm proposing or recommending that could come out of the UDAG fund, which right now has about $7,800 in it. So you want me to move on to the next one or wait on that? Len, you're gonna.
So to the committee members, the funds that Judy's talking about are not coming out of city coffers. They're existing grants. We're also going to be identifying how we're going to provide relief to small businesses, and then later on in a second phase, the recovery aspect of it. So right now, if you don't mind, Judy, we'll just kind of condense this into, again, there's no monies that we're talking about tonight that are going to come out of city coffers. This is all money that was sitting there through grants. And so besides the $3,000 for the marketing aspect of this event to get local artists an opportunity and create some interest, we're also looking at buying PPE for local businesses to either use now, the ones that are open now, or the ones that need to open up and take care of their needs. And so by identifying these funds, we're going to start utilizing those funds with your approval and move it up to full council to start buying PPE for these small businesses, and then identifying what are their further needs in the long term. So is there any questions so far?
So
No?
just to get that is the second point under Survive and Thrive, small business COVID related reopening purchases. That would be for PPE. Is that correct? I just want to be
Yes,
on the
sir.
right. Good.
We've also identified a supplier out in Arizona that's working with us that has the ability to get the PPE that the businesses need. Some of the small businesses have been getting back to the chamber and finding out that at their scale, they couldn't purchase the needed PPE to open up. So hopefully with this more of a volume order, we're going to be able to take care of that. And obviously the price point drops down by purchasing more of a volume.
Yep.
Any objections to any of this concepts?
I don't have an objection. Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Judy, in speaking with the FEMA rep this week, PPE supplies and distribution of them may fall under our FEMA claim. So that may be another source of revenue for that particular operation that you want to do.
Okay, the Barbara Ann at the chamber is coming up with a proposed list of the items and the numbers because she's got the list from the businesses of what their needs are. So once we get that, I was gonna bring it to Ginny so we can look at it. We need to make sure that we meet any procurement if that's necessary. And yeah, Ginny, if you've got a source, then we'll tap into that as well.
I can't guarantee it'll be covered, but I think it's definitely worth asking the question.
Okay. Part of this too would be in addition to doing bulk purchases for some of the PPE, we'd also be wanting to roll out a grant program as well, like what we described and what we sent out with like up to $500, because there's going to be items that the businesses are going to need that are not going to be on the list of items that we're going to purchase. They're going to have specific items for their businesses, maybe, certain types of face shields and sneeze shields and different things that I don't think we just should go out and buy in bulk if we're not sure of exactly what they need and what the size is. So it's going to be a combination of that. And we're also looking in, Len, I'll just go on with the recovery. In terms of the recovery, we're looking at doing something similar to this small grant program, which would provide probably forgivable loans, which would turn into grants for maybe up to $3,000 for recovery. So it could cover PPE, but it could also cover working capital. So rent, and we would take those costs back to March 13th when this started. So it could cover rent, utilities, payroll, inventory that they need to restock, all of those items. We'd have limitations on it. We wouldn't allow major building improvements or anything like that, which could get us into SHPO and secret issues. But the other part of that is Mayor has been talking with the Future for Oneonta Foundation, FOF, and FOF has agreed to be the applicant because they're a nonprofit, and they have agreed to be the applicant for a community foundation of Otsego County's grant program for COVID recovery. So the thought would be that I'll write the grant. The applicant will be FOF. It would probably, that funding would go to a sub-recipient for administering the program. That sub-recipient is to still be determined, but we'd be applying for $25,000 for that. And then any other funding that we could get through foundations or private donors or anything like that could be added to that fund so that it could be a long-term, hopefully a long-term fund. And then if we get state or federal funding as well, we'll have to figure out who is administering that. It likely would have to be the city to apply for it and administer it, which is fine. But we try to coordinate those programs with this ongoing recovery program as well. So that's where we're at. We'd be looking to the city to provide as much of the seed money for these programs as we can.
And as you guys can imagine, 141,000 plus the 25,000 that we're going to apply through the community foundation under our mayor's recommendation, it's not a lot of money. I mean, when you're looking at 100 or more businesses just in the city of Oneonta, that kind of money isn't really going to go that far. So, any questions? Not hearing any. Just to
Glenn,
let.
I got
Go ahead, Scott.
I don't know if this would tie in or not, but with this is the other night when I was having the my little meeting there with the residents of the 6th Ward, one of the residents did bring up about the possibility with reopening and the business is starting to reopen and it might needing some help might be is have we given any thought to trying to help out in the daycare area, or trying to bring back like a summer program or something where to help out the people that are getting back to work. I don't know if that's part of the Survive and Thrive, if that's something that you guys are working on, or it was just a question that was proposed to me because like if you reached out to, I don't know, like the Y or whatever, or whoever, I don't know who would do, like the daycare kind of thing, but they would need some time to get ready and make sure that they fall within the phase reopening and making sure the staff is trained or they got adequate staff and the cleaning procedures and all the PPE that they're going to need. So would that fall within what's trying to be accomplished with the Survive and Thrive, or would that be something different that maybe we should look at with the city to help our local businesses so we can make sure that they can, open up their doors and get back to, to what they need to do?
Scott, speaking for the task force, we are as focused as we can be on what you would specifically call the concerns of business. Obviously, having childcare and all the other health and human services pieces makes such a difference to a business being able to be in business, employees being able to work because they aren't torn between doing one thing and another. What we decided to do, Mayor, I think you agree with this assessment, is to see if we can find some other partners in the city and beyond to essentially take that on as a independent sort of and coordinated sort of a task force on the human side of the pandemic's impact on business and more.
Scott, childcare issue is very, very important, obviously. But I think it's less about money than it is about childcare providers figuring out how to make this work. Childcare was an essential service right from the start. They were not required to shut down. They shut down because there wasn't enough business for them because people didn't need childcare because they weren't working and they were home. But they were always able to stay open. And now part of the problem, I know Ginny has had some conversation with Frank Russo over at the Y, and she could probably add more to it, is they are, able to open now. And, as always, the revenue should be able to pay the way. The problem is getting their employees back. And I think that's the real struggle. So the childcare faces a universal problem that has to be figured out. I don't think that it's about anything that a small amount of money can do. There's a systemic problem here in figuring out how they can get their employees back so that they can be open. Ginny, anything to add to that from your conversation with Frank?
Yes, it's not only just getting his employees back, but getting them trained in time to be able to provide the services, because they have to meet certain levels of training and emergency care measures, things like that. And right now, Frank is just kind of struggling to figure out how he's going to make everything work, and he's not 100% sure he's going to be able to do it.
Catholic Charities is a key player in this in the Oneonta area. OFO is a key player in it. It's a real problem and it's got to be figured out, but I don't think it's something we can fix with this relatively small amount of money.
Any further questions? Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to follow through here. So we have the COVID-19 financial impact.
Len,
Katie has.
I'm sorry, I
Go ahead,
don't mean to
Judy.
interrupt.
Sorry.
I had another grant I needed to talk about.
Mhm.
Oh, the USTA, sorry.
Yeah. So this is a last minute grant that we discovered thanks to some ladies from the Cooperstown Tennis Organization. So we applied for the USTA, U.S. Tennis Association's Recovery Fund, and we were just awarded a $2,000 grant, which will help pay for equipment that's needed in order to open up the Cooperstown Tennis's youth program at our tennis courts in Wilbur Park. So I just wanted to get it in now because there's paperwork that needs to be signed in order for us to accept it, and it hadn't come in front of you guys yet. So we threw it on here at the last minute. Apologize for that, but I didn't want to wait another couple weeks. So I'm asking for that to get moved up to council so that we can accept it and move forward with it. Basically, Cooperstown Tennis will be buying the equipment. We'll be reimbursing them back. Any questions? It's for things like hand sanitizers, some safety training for their staff for, you know, how to reopen safely, and more balls, more receptacles for balls, ways for kids not to touch everything as they're playing, and ways to clean everything. So,
Is there any questions for Judy?
No.
Okay, we'll move that on up.
thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry about that, Judy. Okay, Katie, do you want to talk about the COVID-19 financial impact for retirement incentives and report from the union leadership?
Sure. So Jenny and I are going to kind of present this together. It's all under the same umbrella of, you know, the committee had asked us to, you know, look at ways for potential cost savings and report back at the last committee meeting. So one item that Councilmember Harrington had asked me specifically to look into is the concept of retirement incentives. So retirement incentives traditionally yield cost savings to employers through one of two ways. First, you retire people and then don't fill positions. The second way is if you have someone retire and then replace that person and bring somebody, you know, retire somebody at the top end of the pay scale and then bring them in at the lower end of the pay scale. Either one of those ways can save money. Neither one of those blanket across the city really is an option for us. Firstly, because there are very few areas of the city's operations where we could, for operational efficiency reasons, retire people and not fill positions. Secondly, because of the way that a lot of our union contracts are negotiated, there's not huge gaps in pay. So retiring someone, you know, from, you know, who's been here for 20 years to bringing somebody in at the bottom end of the pay scale wouldn't necessarily yield a huge cost savings for us. That said, after researching this a little bit and really taking a hard look at some of our operations, and in conversation with Ginny, she and I feel very strongly that there are some areas within our operation where a targeted incentive might make sense. Given that our workforce is so diverse in terms of their employment cycle, you know, where they are in terms of actual retirement, how many years they have on the job, different items would incentivize different people, you know, whether it was a health insurance concession or a lump sum cash payout or something like that. So what I would like to do is to, with your blessing, continue to look into retirement incentives with the understanding that they would all result in a cost savings to the city, and then bring them back to the council to answer questions in executive session, because they would be for specific people. So rather than offering just a blanket incentive that I don't think will get much traction or really be all that effective given the nature of our operations, to kind of, you know, just based on a variety of factors, just kind of, you know, make the incentives a little bit more targeted, you know, kind of look at what they would look like, and then bring them back to the council to consider on, you know, an individual separation agreement basis. So, I mean, again, I don't want to give the impression that there's no possibility for this to happen, but I just don't think that saying, hey, we'll offer everybody, you know, 10% of your salary if you want to retire, or we'll give you free health insurance or something like that, that won't really work.
Any questions for Katie right now? Scott, do you have any?
No real questions. I just want to say thanks for, looking at all avenues. I think that's the important part. And, like I was saying before, maybe something will work, maybe nothing will work, but at least if we're looking at everything, then, we can at least make educated decisions. And I think that's the most important part of what we need to do right now. So I have no problem. You got my blessing to continue forward with that. As long, and thank you. I appreciate it.
So maybe we could continue looking at it, and then maybe we could either plan for a special meeting or an executive session after the next finance committee meeting and plan to discuss the specific details then. Again, I hesitate to discuss them openly because it would be individual negotiations with employees and bargaining units based on the situation.
I am 100% agreement with that.
I would say, Katie, that you have the appropriate nods. I see John and Mark nodding their head, and you have my approval to continue through, and I look forward to hearing what you have to give back as a report.
Thank you so much. You want me to just continue on with the union feedback, I guess?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, sure. No problem. Well, it's next. I wasn't sure if you were waiting for me. Okay. So as you had asked, I did reach out to all 4 union presidents: Matt Harper from the CSEA, Andy Turner from Fire Union IAFF, Brian Setner from the PBA, and Eric Berger from the police sergeants. So unfortunately, I didn't get a response or an acknowledgement from either of the police unions. PBA and sergeants didn't respond. CSEA and IAFF did have some good feedback. Some of the things Ginny's incorporated into her next report, which she will give you. For the most part, what I heard from the unions was more about things that they don't want to see happen. Like they don't want staffing cuts, and they don't want cuts to, equipment or safety measures or across the board salary reductions or reductions in overtime, things like that. But we did reach out. We gave everybody an opportunity to give us some meaningful input, and only 50% of our unions took the opportunity to do that. But we did have the conversations, and again, some of the things Ginny has incorporated into her report.
Thank you. Ginny, are you ready?
I am ready.
Floor.
Okay, thank you. There's going to be a lot of information here. So when somebody wants me to pause, just please let me know. I just want to give you a few financial updates before we actually get into the COVID-19 areas. But as you know, the 2020 water and sewer annual billing went out. And as of May 22nd, we had about 36% of the bills paid, which I think is really good. I'm very curious to see what the extra 30-day extension due date is going to do. But the payments have been coming in very well. And we've only had a few homeowners ask for payment plans, and we have worked those out with them. And I'm hoping that we'll still be very successful by the end of the collection period with the water bills. With the general fund, I was just giving you an update on the adopted budget and the adjusted budget. The only thing that really changed from my report from last month is that we're going through some of the old 2019 purchase orders, and we were able to cancel out about $45,000 worth. So that's instant savings for this year's budget. And we may be able to close out some more because we're still reviewing some of them to see if we still need them. And I will tell you that we are a little bit behind in closing the 2019 books just because of all the challenges we have been facing for the past few months. So once those numbers are finalized, I will be bringing the 2019 annual report to you. The major revenue areas, the sales tax, we are about 3.2% lower than last year as far as year to date. This was after we received the March sales tax payment. The March sales tax payment was down by a little over $97,000 from last year, which was 29.1%. But that was offset by the gains that we received for January and February. So year to date, we're only down by 36,000. Now we know this trend isn't going to stay because each, the upcoming months are going to be down. So Len had asked me in the last finance committee meeting to estimate what it would be if we stayed at the 29% for the remaining year, for the remainder of the year. And if we do that, it's going to be a $1.1 million loss in sales tax. But I still think it's a little too early. We don't know what the fall is going to bring, how fast things are going to open up. So I'm hoping that that is a very conservative estimate. The ambulance charges, they still are down. And this is going to have a major impact on the general fund revenue if this trend continues. And but I will keep you updated on that. As of right now, we are 288 less calls from 2019. We are eligible for a second round of CARES Act for the ambulance, but it's going to take a little bit more work, and I'm having staff work on that. So the amount has not been determined yet. Interest earnings?
Jenny?
Yes.
Jenny, I do have a question on the ambulance charges.
Sure.
So we had projected, did we project higher than where we're at? Let me see, back up. Did, in the budget, did you project higher than what we typically would have, 458 calls, or did you trend based on 2018 and 19?
Well, matter of fact, I based it on like the past 6 or 7 years. Annually, we average about 2,200 ambulance calls. We have done that year after year for the past 5 or 6 years. So I based the revenue on 2,200 calls. So we're not going to probably hit that this year. But also what's going to offset this a little bit is that we did raise our rates. So the amount that we're going to collect on our ambulance calls is going to be a higher return, but we're just not going to have as many. So it's going to be a combination.
Right. So that was that was part B to my question, is that, so out of the 288 that were less, did we budget for $1,000 per call for average, or?
No, it's more like $500 a call, because we actually write off about 47% of what we bill between the bad debt and between the contractual allowances. So even though we're billing $1,200 for a BLS call, we're only collecting about $509.
Right, and that's through what the insurance companies and the federal government, they dictate the rate.
Correct.
So, yeah, so even like a doctor's office, so that the committee members understand that, you know, the healthcare provider bills out at a much different rate than what they actually get collected from the insurance company.
Len,
so in your budget,
I'm going to have to sign off. Len, I'm going to be signing off.
Okay,
Jenny,
thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
You've been at this all day. Thank you. So I'm just trying to, in my brain, think, are we looking at a $288,000 loss or $144,000 loss? So given your information, I'm going to say you're looking at basically $144,000.
Well, as of right now, if you take the 288 and multiply it by, say, $600, right? So we're about 60,000 loss right now. So I will do a better analysis later on in the year when I see where the trend is going to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Just want to piggyback on that a little bit. What percentage of our ambulance calls are Medicaid or Medicare versus regular insurance? Do you happen to know that?
I have that information, but just not with me, and I can email it to you, Scott. I don't want to quote it from memory. Because I just don't want to give you bad information. I do have that back in the office.
Okay. No, I was just curious if that's something that we tracked or didn't track.
Oh yeah, no, we track it every year.
Okay. Yeah, sometime when you get a chance, don't rush right out and do it. That's not a, you know. Thank you.
You're welcome. On the interest earnings, we are, as through April, we've got about a little over 33,000 in interest income as compared to 68,000 of last year, but it is much better than 2018 where we only had about 7,900. But due to the decrease in the federal rates, the interest rates are low right now. I don't know if it will stay that way for the rest of the year, but what I have done in my projections is I have basically cut the interest income in half, thinking that it was based on a 2% return, and I think it's going to be more like a 1% return, even maybe a 0.75% return. But we monitor that every month when we get our statements from our investments and from our banks. The court fines and the parking fines, realized year to date, we've gotten a little over 39,000 as compared to 53,000 for 2019. In talking with the police chief, even once the courts reopen and the parking enforcement is active, because of the non-activity in the area and with the college students not being here and with the travelers not being here, we don't expect this revenue to increase dramatically until our activity gets back up to normal. So again, I've adjusted for that in my projections of lost revenue. State aid, we still have not heard from the state if they're going to be cutting our state aid. So what I've done in my loss projections, I've given you one column with without state aid loss and one with state aid loss. And also on the federal aid, we have not heard from the federal government stimulus programs if they're going to fund anything for local governments. So any questions on any of the major revenue sources? Okay. So on COVID-19 related expenses, I just wanted to let you know that we've got about 17,000 in actual expenses that we've paid for so far. That includes usually it's the cleaning supplies, the PPEs, any type of expenses that we normally would not have been purchasing had this not happened. And we have about 4,000 outstanding in encumbrances. And year-to-date COVID-related overtime expense, which will be eligible on a FEMA claim, has been about $12,600 so far. What that overtime is for is when overtime is incurred because, say, somebody has been put in quarantine and we had to have a person come in to cover their shift. Mm-hmm. And we met with the FEMA director via telephone this week and to get our FEMA claim started. And just so you know, the FEMA claim is open-ended. This is very new to them. And so we don't have an end date. Normally with disasters, there's usually a 6-month end date to it, but just know that this is open-ended and it will be evolving as time goes on. And also just to inform you, in meeting the governor's guidelines and keeping the employees on the payroll, so through the last paycheck that we received on May 15th, we had about 11,700 hours of paid emergency leave time, which totaled about 225,000 in wages. This number does not include the FICA tax or the retirement costs for those wages. So I just wanted to provide that number to you. And then an updated, any questions so far on any of that information? On the updated estimate revenue losses, if you want to go to the schedule for the detail, but what I've done is I've updated it based on, before I had percentages, I had 10, 18%, 23%, but I'm starting to get away from the percentages based on looking at activity and actual numbers coming in, for example, on the interest, on the parking tickets, on the court fines, on the ambulance revenue. So it's starting to be a combination of a percentage estimate along with flat dollar adjustments. So you will see in the summary where I've got an estimated loss and then the estimated loss with 20% loss in state aid. So this is quite a range of 800,000 to 3.2 million. But at this point in time, I think the strongest probability is going to fall in level 4, around 2.5 million. And the reason I say that is when you take a combination of the state sales tax plus the ambulance, that's a pretty substantial number just between those two sources. And then I wanted to highlight Mayor Herzig's suggested guidelines that he spoke about in the planning committee meeting. And and you'll see a little summary here. I won't have to repeat his words, but we wanted to take this and provide this to you in looking at the possible cuts as far as the goals that we want to try to keep in mind when we're making our choices. So in the possible general fund expenditure savings, the department heads reviewed their 2020 budgets, and I've got some pretty cool shout outs for some of the department heads because they really did an excellent job. And they went line by line, item by item, and I really appreciated their assistance and their help. And what it did is it made me be able to give you these estimates with solid, good ideas to consider. So the first category is actual savings. These are savings that have already occurred in the budget lines. For example, legislative. these were supplies, and for example, your new photos and your new nameplates and things like that. Those expenses ended up being incurred in 2019, so we don't need them in 20. The finance, the vacancy from Nicole not being with us for 2.5 months, that's already a realized savings. Our insurance, these are our various liability policies. The budget was about 10,000 more than what the actual came in at. And the transfers to capital projects, this was for the fuel farm. If you remember in the 2020 budget, we were estimating that project was going to be 1.5 million and our local portion was going to be 150,000. That now is only coming in around 800,000. So we're saving about 70,000 on the local portion. So that money's already real savings. So the next section is about potential personnel savings. These are for vacancies and or potential vacancies if depending on when we do the hire date. So if the council or if experience or whatever ends up not filling the city manager job before 2021, we could have a possible savings of $100,000. We have a vacancy right now in the engineering department for the GIS technician. We'd like to get that hire done by September 1st. So we'll realize the $33,000 savings by deferring it till September 1st. And there's a number of part-time, I won't name all of them here, but wherever it's labeled part-time, this is our summer help. And what the department heads have done is figured out a way to still be able to get the work done, but without using the part-time help. And I really appreciate their efforts in doing that. The police, the vacancies, this is a combination of police officers and also dispatch. And this includes not only the salaries, but the fringe benefits. And when we budget for vacancies, we always budget for a family plan. So when you get a family health insurance plan, that's a pretty expensive number. So those numbers add up pretty quickly. The police overtime, the police chief pointed out in his narrative that 3 of the major overtime events did not occur this year. That would be O-Fest, the St. Patrick's Day, and 4th of July. So the next upcoming large overtime expenditure for him will be Halloween. So he's estimating that we're going to save about $35,000 in overtime for this year because those events did not happen. And the grant administration vacancy, we're hoping to get that position filled by September 1. So we'll be able to realize about a $61,000 savings there. And again, that's a combination of salary and fringe benefits and including health insurance, payroll taxes, and retirement. So those are possible personnel savings depending on what decisions are made. The next section are potential savings based on the department heads looking at line for line of items that they can either defer or possibly just not do this year. And that's one thing that I want to stress. Everything that's on this list is going to need reconsideration in the future because we're not going to be able to permanently not do these things, but we're going to have the opportunity to perhaps defer them. And I don't think I need to go line by line here. I tried to give a good enough explanation so you could understand the different expense items that were being offered by the department heads. So if you want to turn to page 5, you will see that the estimated possible savings from all of those categories above totaled about $725,000. The next section is on reserve funds. The first 2 items are already realized reserve savings. The excess from the police cameras and printers that we talked about at council, and the excess from the vehicle purchases, it just happened to be that what we had in the budget is not where the actuals came in. So that 7,800 and the 32,000 are already real savings. The next 3 items are items that were suggested to be postponed. 85,000 for sidewalk work, 12,000 for the knee wall basketball lighting, and 58,000 for the dog park. So these are just suggestions for you to consider.
Jenny,
Yes.
if you don't. So Greg, the $85,000 worth of sidewalk, what, is that a particular ward area or is that spread out throughout the whole city?
Intended for sidewalk replacement on Galt Ave. A couple of years ago, there's a concrete sidewalk adjacent to the curb where it had settled down and there were some uneven sections. It was a little unsafe. So DPW overlaid that with asphalt as a temporary patch. That asphalt's in good shape. It's serving the purpose as far as providing a level or roughly level, a smooth surface that's not dangerous to pedestrians. Some of the neighbors there were upset. They wanted concrete. They thought we were going to leave that as a permanent patch, but we told them this is something that we're planning to replace. We just didn't have the money at the time to do concrete. So I think it's something we can push off a little bit further, but it's still, it's just deferring it out a little further.
Well, I guess for now, let's put it on hold, but I think before we get out of the season, we should maybe revisit it. Let's see where we're at financially. That way, that'll give Jenny a more opportunity to see what's coming in, what's not coming in. But to Gary's point, infrastructure is very important, because if we keep delaying this stuff, we're just going to pay for it more and more a year or two from now.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is one in particular. We're not standing a chance of hurting ourselves in the very near future. So if we needed to,
Okay.
we can push it off a little bit.
Okay, should I continue, Lynn?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so you'll see that all of those proposed areas total a little over $920,000. And so I think this number will evolve. We'll be looking at each line. For example, in the report a little bit further down, the fire chief, I just got his proposals today. I didn't have time to put it into this report. So that will add to the potential savings, and we'll be constantly looking at this and monitoring it and updating it. And then the next section is for programs and events that are included in the 2020 budget, but it is not known at this time if these items will be allowed or even able to occur. That is the Mayor's Cup for the soccer event. This is also offset by revenue that I've taken out, thinking that if we're not going to have the event, we're not going to have the revenue nor the expenditure. Swimming pools, if we do not open the swimming pools, band concerts in the park, the teen center reopening, and the YMCA after school or afternoon program. So those are all type of events that we just don't have the information right now if we're going to be able to hold them. And as the mayor and I spoke about earlier, the YMCA is really in a unknown state of decision-making because they just don't know what's going to happen. Any questions? Okay, so I've listed 10 points of interest for you to consider. One we already talked about tonight is the debt service refinancing, and as far as the estimated interest savings. And also in all of the expenses that were listed above in the report, it did not include any estimates for decreased vehicle fuel or vehicle maintenance or possible decrease in utility expenses just because of lack of activity. The vehicle bills that we've been getting in for our vehicle fuel has been very low. So, but it's too early for me to give you any estimates on those expense areas. Also, Len, you might be able to answer this question for me. I was not able to get a hold of Mr. May, but in the airport budget, we've got $50,000 for runway repairs. I do not know if that needs to be done outside of the airport capital projects that are going to be done, but that is an item that I think we need to talk about and investigate to see if that's going to really happen.
I know what it's in regards to, and it's a project that the previous city manager kicked the can down the road about 3 years. And I think we're now to the point where the FAA and the New York State ADO is going to require us to complete that. So it's more likely it's going to be mandated.
Okay, but do you know if it's connected with any of the airport capital grants that we have right now?
No, everything that we're doing is either the taxiway or the taxiway area or the field farm. What this is regarding is the actual runway.
Okay. Thank you for that. Another point of interest is the training and travel expenses that were proposed reductions. We're assuming that a lot of the seminars or conferences are going to be done online this year instead of in person, or that we're just not going to attend them. Some people just volunteered up their travel time saying, no, we're not going to go. Not all travel time has been eliminated from the budget, but I just wanted to let you know that right now the proposals are for ones that have been volunteered. And we've already talked about the YMCA is determining what it may be able to provide. And I wanted to point out that we've got some about $18,000 worth of funds set aside for youth employment programs. I do not know, once the Y makes a decision about childcare, if we could possibly use these funds to help supplement that program. That is a strong possibility. I just wanted to let you guys know that that was out there. And the next, item 7, is really going to be more for the 2021 budget, but I always want to consider it whenever a possibility arises. But I'm looking for requests for proposals and or bids and or intermunicipal agreements or shared services that can be explored for such services. For example, auditing, our legal expenses. You know, can we take our all of our legal expenses and combine them with one company? Our IT services, what can we do with our IT services to make it more cost effective? Is it something that we could have a shared contract with other municipalities? Just thinking out of the box, thinking about different ways to approach a major expense, because all of these dollars are major dollars. Possible consideration for salary reductions or health insurance contribution increases is just an option for point of interest. And then the last 2 items, the personnel director will review current stipends that are being paid, and she will also review and determine potential retirement incentives that she had talked to you about on a case-by-case basis. Any questions? Right. For the fire department, I just wanted to point out that, as I said to you before, the fire chief was currently reviewing his line items at the time I made this report. I received them today. I'll incorporate them into the next report. But in meeting with the fire chief and the assistant fire chief, Katie and I and Greg were meeting with them to discuss possible overtime savings, and the following options were discussed. Reducing the standard operation procedure, the SOP, from 6 to 5. The chiefs rejected this option. Statistics show that once the SOP was raised to 6, the annual overtime hours averaged increased from approximately 4,800 hours a year to 8,800 hours a year, and with the recent years being 9,000 to 10,000 hours. So, and it may not only be the SOP that has increased those hours, but it was a major factor. And then reducing the number of firefighters in the ambulance from 3 to 2. And again, the chiefs rejected this option. And then we also discussed hiring part-time staff.
Jenny,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but did they give any reason why they rejected from 3 to 2 on the ambulance?
Well, not in this particular conversation, but with previous conversations that I've had with them, they tell me that it's more efficient. The firefighters don't get injured with lifting the patient. And my question back was, and of course, I'm not a fire person, I'm not a firefighter. I'm not the one there tending the patient. But my question was, well, we now have the automatic lift stretchers, so the firemen would not be lifting all of that weight. I didn't know if that was a benefit or not. I know George had the idea of having what he called a fly card. So the third person could use the fly car, go to the scene, see if they needed the third firefighter there, and if not, return back to the fire station. I don't think that option was accepted. But to get an accurate answer, I think you should ask them and not me, because I'm not the one in that fire world.
No, I was just curious because when you said it was ejected, I didn't know if they gave you a reason why. I will reach out to them, or I might actually, Katie, I might go through you. I think that's probably the right way of doing it, to see what their objections are. Or maybe even, Len, maybe we should have them come to a finance meeting where maybe we can discuss some of this, so they're on the conversation as well.
Scott, if I could be part of that conversation, I was curious about the point before that with reducing the standard operating procedure from 6 to 5 and why it increased the overtime hours so much. So I'd love to be part of that bundled conversation.
I will tell you that
Katie,
they have told me that they would actually come in and do a demonstration with the stretcher of showing why 3 firefighters are better than 2. So they may give you that option.
well, before we go down that path, maybe we should just wait, see what their suggestions were to the committee on reducing their operating costs for this year, next year.
He didn't give me anything for 2021. He was just looking for what he could save in 2020. I have not discussed 2021 with any department head yet.
Okay.
But what I want to stress here is, and I shared this with, I believe, Scott, the overtime cost in 2019 between wages and fringe benefits was $594,000. That's just not sustainable.
It's really not sustainable in what we're up against right now. And I understand it'll be down because we're down 288 ambulance calls. Our ambulance calls generates most because of having 2 ambulances go out, calling in the back-end crews. You know, I understand that, and I understand it's paid time off and stuff like that. But I mean, we're kind of, you know, we're asking everybody to think outside the box, and we're asking everybody to look at painful decisions. And I don't like quick no's. I want this, we could do this, but this is why we rather not do it, versus just quick no's. But that's just my 2 cents on that. But thank you very much.
John, did you have any questions?
No, this is outstanding. It's a very good comprehensive listing. So,
Okay. Katie, did you want to add anything?
So Jenny is going to take a look at what the chief had submitted, right? I mean, so do you want me to hold off on scheduling them to come and talk to you? I mean, quite frankly, I was really disappointed in the way that it was handled at the fire department level. I mean, the chief and the assistant chief, you know, we spent a good long time talking with them, and where we had other departments who were very willing to think outside the box, kind of like Scott had mentioned, to come up with, you know, various ways of cost savings. I mean, all of our ideas were rejected, but they provided very few of their own. So what I would have liked to have seen would be, okay, if this won't work, give us a justification why, and give us another possibility. And that part of the conversation didn't happen. So I was very disappointed with the conversation we had with the fire department, quite frankly, with the leadership.
Okay. Well, given that report and what Jenny also said, maybe the best thing is to bring both chiefs in and to this committee, and they can explain why they didn't have any productive contributions to the cause.
And I do want to add that the SOP was increased in the year of 2007. So it has been a while for this practice. And I know that I've repeated myself every year at budget time since 2007 about the SOP. But I preface that with, I'm not in the fire world, I'm in the finance world. So I'm just letting you know what it costs.
I really
Right,
appreciate
but to
that,
your
Jenny.
point,
Go ahead, Len.
go ahead, Scott.
And I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit. I understand where you're coming from, but Len, you might as well go ahead. I'm having a brain moment here.
Are you having a senior moment?
Receding hairline.
not old enough.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with John. You're not old enough for that one. So yeah, I mean, they can come in and just to your point, Jenny, they can explain how we can reduce the hours or any other ideas on their part. This is a team effort. All the departments have given in dramatically as you go through the multiple pages that you, Katie, and Greg have put together on or from the department heads. To have your ideas shot down is one thing, but not to have a rebuttal is another. So.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Now I'm like you, Scott. My brain is freezing here. I will incorporate what the fire chief reported to me today. I just didn't have time to add it to the report. And so I will be able to give you updated numbers once I look at that. And so I think if there are any more questions, I just want to read my conclusion here. As reported, potential revenue losses estimate from 800,000 to 3.2 million. With the suggested deferrals, and the general fund has the potential of over $1 million in savings for 2020, and that number may grow depending on the decisions that are made in the points of interest and the different programs. But as previously reported, the general fund has a strong fund balance, and it will endure this crisis. I truly believe that. And due to the leadership and the teamwork of the city team, we have the ability to soften the impact. It will take patience, cooperation, forward thinking to seize every opportunity for innovation. However, the effects of this crisis will reach beyond 2020, which means that we will need to continue our efforts as we begin developing the 2021 budget. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank the department heads and staff for their extraordinary efforts in reviewing his or her budgets. It was greatly appreciated. It made my ability to present this report to you because of everybody's teamwork. And I'm very proud to be part of that team. And I think the city is very fortunate to have the staff that they have.
Jenny, I want to say thank you to you and Katie for spearheading this, and Greg as well. When I put this out there, it was just saying that, we had to look at every option. I know that some of these options are really not going to be feasible really for the 2020, because we're kind of, even though we're only a few months into it, we're into the budget year. But to look beyond 2020, look down the road, 2021, 22, 23, 24, look at the future of the city and stuff. And you guys took what little bit of information I had that night and you guys ran with it. And I mean, what you put into it so far is phenomenal. I can't thank you guys enough. And as we get going with this and whatever we decide as a board, and out of this finance committee, you guys should all feel proud, because this is going to set the city up for a long-term success. Not just the 1 year, 2 year. This is going to be a long-term, and everybody should feel good about this. And thank you very much for all the time and effort you put into this.
Are there any questions? Is there any topics I didn't cover that you were looking for?
Any questions, guys?
This was very thorough. I'm going to echo what Scott said. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to the department heads. This was very helpful. So thank you very much. And I found it really kind of easy and accessible, and appreciate the fact that you've talked about, over $1 million that's potentially here for savings. It seems like that's a lot of steps in the right direction. So thank you again for the time.
Any other items of discussion for tonight? Am I missing something?
Yeah, just an observation, more of an observation or a question. We have a number of other things in terms of the future of the city that have been probably affected by this. For example, the Artist Loft project, other things that may be coming down from the state in terms of limited funding for other sorts of projects that were much more on the planning, much more solidly proposed before this occurred. So I think keeping in touch with that, since we were talking about strategy, we had a number of things where our strategy or growth strategies were linked to some other sorts of things. And some update on that, some consideration of it. Some of these things are not even in we don't know yet. We don't know about the colleges. We don't know if we're going to have students. Certainly baseball camps have an effect on short-term rentals, and colleges and how they operate may have an effect on our real estate businesses. So we just have to be aware of these things possibly coming down the pike, but it is speculation on everyone's part at the moment. But these are also significant externals that are going to be potentially affecting us greatly. So it's not just Main Street, it's also housing and who's living here. So we'll have to stay in touch with that and start to come to grips with some of the impacts they have with the quality of life in a city. So there we go.
Well said, John. Scott, anything? Final remarks?
Well, an interest from sitting here for so long, and I had a couple things that I was working on, but I can reach out in an email and share them with you guys. We were talking about like shared services and stuff like that, and I've been out talking to a couple of. I got about 5 towns and villages that I've been reaching out with, possibly seeing how we might be able to work together and help, streamline some costs and stuff. Greg, I'll probably be reaching out to you because I know some of it with DPW is going to be more into your wheelhouse than what I know about. So, we're all just trying to knock some ideas around and try to help each other out as municipalities as well. So I'll reach out to an email and let you guys know what I'm working on.
Great, thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Any of the city staff, any other items of discussion? No? I think that's it. All right, guys. I guess it's dinner time. Take care.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.